Lucas is one of the main characters in Stranger Things, but one big storyline just hasn't been touched on across the series very much. Lucas has had some interesting character development, but fans have been waiting for this storyline since the first season. So stay tuned to today's video as we discuss, are the Duffer brothers racist? Why didn't they let Lucas develop until now? First up, Stranger Things has a story for Lucas, but has completely ignored it. Lucas is a very important character in Stranger Things and is one of the main kids that we have followed since the very first episode. Out of the main characters in Stranger Things, Lucas is one of the only black characters. In fact, Lucas and his family are some of the only black people featured in all of Stranger Things. The later seasons have slowly introduced more and more, but none of them are really main characters. With the show being set in the 1980s, one storyline that fans have wanted to see involves Lucas and his race. You'd think that having a black main character in the 1980s would be a great way to create a commentary of the time and talk about how they were treated back then. Despite only being around 40 years ago, racism in the 1980s was pretty high, and Lucas surely would have faced more during his time growing up in Hawkins. Over the last 2 seasons or so, Stranger Things has been delving into deeper topics such as depression, sexuality, and even PTSD in some cases. It's great that a show set in the 1980s is dealing with issues like this. One major example is, of course, Robin. She came out to Steve in season 3, leading the fan base to want Robin to get a girlfriend and come out to everyone. Sadly, the fan base isn't realizing that that just won't happen, as Robin won't come out due to the fear of being attacked. In the 1980s, this was really common, and the Duffer brothers are doing a great job commentating on it all. Robin has a best friend who is helping her through it all. So the question stands, why isn't Lucas getting a storyline like this? Well, early on in Stranger Things, we got some commentary on race, as there were some statements about Lucas and him being black. It's such an obvious storyline for the Duffer brothers to bring in, but clearly they just don't care enough to do so. We have to focus even more on Eleven and Mike. Small town racism would have been a great storyline to intertwine with season 3 and 4, as more of the town was used as its set pieces. The topic just isn't touched on enough, and it really should be. We would have a really interesting and deep storyline about racism and how Lucas overcomes it. If it was in the forefront, it would be much better. There was actually a line meant for season 3 of Stranger Things from Billy toward Lucas, but it was cut because it brought his bigotry to the forefront a little too much. If Billy stayed around, we could have had an arc where he stops being racist and accepts his faults, but that didn't happen. But even if the Duffer brothers needed to tone down that kind of story in Stranger Things season 2, and of course there was no space for it in season 3, they had a great opportunity to centralize it in Lucas's season 4 arc. When he joins the basketball team, there's one other black player. These characters could have discussed the pressures of being minorities in a predominantly white town. Instead, they hardly interact. Moreover, once Jason turns against Lucas in the end, the racial dynamics of their relationship could have surfaced. After all, Jason pulling a gun on an unarmed Lucas is a charged moment for black viewers, who might have expected such a turn, but the show never touches the optics of that, and it's a decision that really puts the final nail in the coffin of a poignant look at 80s racism. Though Stranger Things definitely is a show about children saving the world from terrifying monsters, it's still a show about adolescence and growing up. These children need to deal with issues like that, and they have the perfect character to delve into racism and what it can do to the youth. Maybe next season, when Lucas is in his very late teens, we might get some more stories featuring this type of thing, but we don't know just yet. To end off this part of the video, no, the Duffer brothers aren't being racist. They just don't want to delve into this topic for some reason. Maybe it was sidelined for some unknown reasons, but we won't really find out until the series is over, I guess. Well, what do you think about all of this? Let us know down in the comments section below. And now stay tuned for some more Stranger Things news and information from the last few weeks. Next up, Noah Schnapp confirms Will's sexuality and who he is in love with. For months now, fans have been talking about Will's sexuality in Stranger Things Season 4. Ever since the first major trailer for the season released, fans had noticed the changes with Will. He walked much differently, and he just acted completely different overall. While this isn't an exact showing of his possible newfound sexuality, it led fans to speculate on what was happening with the character. When the first part of the season finally launched back in June, fans were greeted with a new storyline that really proved fans right. Throughout season 4 of Stranger Things, Will has clearly been figuring out his sexuality and wants to express it. His brother Jonathan has noticed and supports him, but Will wants to open up. He is clearly in love with Mike, but nothing was confirmed during the series run. Even when Volume 2 released in July, it was again teased at, but not fully confirmed in any way. The scene where Will talks about how Eleven loves Mike showed the audience Will's true feelings toward Mike. For a few weeks since the release of season 4, the cast was asked about Will's sexuality, but they didn't confirm anything. They ended up saying how it's open to interpretation and that they didn't want to label him. Surprisingly, that has all changed with a new interview with Noah Schnapp, who plays Will in the series. It was hinted at in season 1. It was always kind of there, but you never really knew, is it just him growing up slower than his friends? Now that he's gotten older, they made it a very real, obvious thing. Now it's 100% clear he is gay and does love Mike, Schnapp said. It's amazing to finally have some confirmation on this topic, as fans have been waiting ages for it. Hopefully in the final season they establish this a little more by having him talk to Mike about it. We know that this final season will have a massive time jump, but we don't know the exact time. It's probably going to be around 2 years to grow the cast up a little bit. They all look a little too old to be 16, so making them all 18 or 19 would be great for the series going forward. We know that the final season will have the first season pairings, so the main boys and maybe even Steve and Dustin on the side. Max being in a coma means that the original 4 are together. This is where Mike and Will could have their talk. But what do you think? And finally, we have Joseph Quinn breaks down as fans thank him. The final piece of Stranger Things content for us to talk about in this video comes from a recent convention. Joseph Quinn has gained a massive following since his role as Eddie in Stranger Things Season 4. His character really struck a chord in many of the fans, and they really enjoyed his performance as well. Since the show has finished its 4th season, the cast have been getting booked at conventions all across the globe. At these conventions, they usually take photos with people, sign merchandise, and just talk to the fans overall. Recently, Joseph Quinn was at a convention and something awful happened to him. Because of him being a new star and wanting to thank his fans properly, he was taking his time thanking and talking to each person in the line. The crew then shouted at him to move on quick and not talk to literally every guest. They even shouted at Quinn's father for helping out and taking photos. After this, he went to the stage to answer questions from fans. Here, one apologized for what happened, and they thanked him for loving his fans so much. He clearly enjoys talking to every one of them and was just being nice. The crew had no right to shout at him like that and make his life even harder. It was a terrible situation, but at least the fans knew it was wrong and thanked him for being so nice. And that's the end of today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed this latest video. If you did, would you please let us know down in the comment section below? It would be very helpful. Make sure to like the video, comment down below, and of course subscribe to the channel with the notification bell rung. Thank you for watching today's video. Bye!